Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers. It is 6:30 p.m. here on the United States East Coast. I'm here with Tricia Flanagan, and welcome to Campaign for America. Tricia, if we never thought that we would have impact and the messages that we have been sharing on this broadcast with people not only throughout the United States, but around the country, we should now know that last night's broadcast, record-breaking numbers of viewers, 35,000. That is absolutely phenomenal.
It really is. We're so grateful. We're so honored that you choose to spend this time with us every night. We are committed to bringing you news that no one else can give you. We're committed to giving you the truth. And this is a testament to how thirsty America is for this kind of broadcast. We are the news. You are the news, America. And we're honored to be sharing that moment with you.
One of the things that people have said to me through messaging and phone calls is that they're glad that we're removing emotion from the decision making. And I'm happy to hear that people are not mistaking passion for emotion. Yeah, there are times we get angry. There are times we get really distressed, like you do, over the things we see. But when we parse things and we put things aside and put things in perspective, we realize, folks, and this is what we truly want to get through to you, is that this isn't the end. This is the beginning. This is the beginning. This is an opportunity to do a lot of things that we should have done years ago. Just so happens that President Trump, he broke the back of establishment politics in the Democrat Party as well as the Republican Party. He actually addressed that many, many times through his actions. And we're going to share with you tonight how we got here, where we are, and where we're going. And it is very important that we take hold of facts. You know, Tricia, we're combating, when I say we, those of us who are taking an approach to move forward, we're combating a lot of bad information, misinformation. I'm convinced that a lot of it is coming from the Chinese Communist Party. I'm convinced that a lot of it has come from Democrat socialists. And I am also convinced that a lot of it is coming from and being spread by Republicans who don't know better. So we have to make sure, folks, that as we move forward, our interest is not just the party. The interest is America. And we must keep in mind that at all cost. Now, saying that, I was interviewed by a number of news media outlets this week, and I made it very clear that I am standing shoulder to shoulder with the President of the United States. Make no mistake about it. I've had people text me and say I ought to remove from my bio the fact that I worked for the President on his advisory board. I have it in writing, folks. People have actually said that to me. I'm going to tell you something, folks. As a U.S. military commander and a police commander, you do not abandon your leader in combat. You do not abandon your leader when things get tough. You stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Now, people may say, well, you know, that's the problem with you Republican conservatives. You follow blindly. You have a president here who is being accused of all sorts of high crimes and misdemeanors. But when you look at the facts, and the facts clearly bear out, and Trish is going to explain some of those facts tonight, President Trump did not lead an insurrection. President Trump made it very, very clear for people to act responsibly, for people who are marching to the Capitol, I believe these are his words, march peacefully and go home. How does all this other stuff come out as a result of that speech is beyond comprehension. So I've been asked over and over and over again, then who is responsible if not President Trump for what occurred at the Capitol? I'll tell you who's responsible. A few people are responsible. Number one, if in fact the law enforcement agencies had information, and we understand they did, that there was going to be some problems at that protest, they should have been prepared. So why weren't they prepared? I've been in law enforcement 38 years. When we received information and intelligence that there's going to be a large protest, you prepare. You prepare by getting enough manpower, by giving all your manpower the equipment they need, and you make sure what? that it doesn't get out of hand. And you have intelligence sources, terrorism task forces, whatever kind of force you want to call it, on the ground with their eyes and ears wide open, looking for troublemakers. And you arrest them before they create trouble. Now, Tricia, I just said something a few minutes ago, and that was this. They knew, they were prepared. Did not the chief of the Capitol Police 2 days before this event ask for National Guard help?
Yes, yes, indeed. You're so right in your assessment of the situation on the ground. And we want to be crystal clear at Campaign for America. Our passion is about policy, and our commitment is to the Constitution. And we are abiding in the rule of law, and exactly what you just said. And we're going to go through a timeline in a little bit, and we're going to talk about exactly what you discussed, what the response of the Capitol Police were. They did request enforcement by National Guard, and it was actually the Congress who turned them down. And, you know, here's the bottom line. An insurrection, an act of terrorism, whatever you want to call it, the culpability resides in the individuals who orchestrated this. We could not be clearer, and the president could not be clearer. And the evidence and the video testimony bears out that the president was not only calling for law and order and calling for a peaceful walk to the Capitol, but the timeline will show you that, in fact, there was a separate group of individuals that took it upon themselves to undertake this act. This is not the fault of the president. What happened to personal responsibility? This is something that we have to investigate, and the blame falls squarely away from our president. And again, at Campaign for America, we stand for law and order and the facts. That's what you're going to get here tonight.
We've made it very clear that anyone who breached that Capitol, went into those chambers, they went in there with the intent to assault our democracy. No question about it. But most of those people who did that, most of them were not ardent supporters of the president, were not there to go to protest peacefully. They went there to create the chaos that they created. Unfortunately, for the cops that were assigned there, for the cops that were given an assignment to guard the Capitol, but not given the tools and the manpower they needed to do that, that was an open door. That was an invitation. That was like you opening the door to your house and telling the criminal, hey, come on in, do what you want. Now, let me also make this very clear. It is very, very disheartening. Believe me, it is. And I have friends who have done this. To see people not only walk away from the president at this hour, but condemn him. I'm talking about Republicans. I mean, come on. You stick with the guy for the 4 years he's in. The guy's been hammered day in and day out. And now for your own hide, and that's what this is all about, folks. This is not just about attacking President Trump. This is about attacking our democracy, our conservative agenda, our movement. This is all about attacking America. Now, you want the proof? I'll give you the proof. We've always prided ourselves here on Campaign for America to back up every single thing that we say. So let's talk about the assault on America. It begins in many places, but I'll begin here. When you have members of Congress suggesting that resolutions should be introduced to remove from Congress conservatives who stood up and stood by the President of the United States, not for anarchy, all right, not for the crimes that were committed by these nutcases that went in there and did what they did, but who stood up for the president, who exercised their constitutional rights, suggesting that they should be removed from Congress and prosecuted. You know where that was done? In the Politburo of the Soviet Union, folks. It's done in Beijing, China, by the Chinese Communist Party. So when these Democrats, who I call socialists and communists, go down that road, they are adding more fuel to the fires raging in the hearts of people across this country. And they are clearly showing us that, I don't care what they say, clearly showing us that they are not respecting the Constitution. They are making their own Constitution. They are making their own laws. Tricia, what do you think of that? Removing members of Congress, lawfully standing up, making speeches, and defending what they believe to be right.
Well, exactly. I think that this is a very slippery and dangerous slope to go down, because let's take apart what these senators and what these congressional members actually did. They abided by every article that the Constitution provided. We talked last night about how the rightful arena was in the congressional setting to address this. Look, no one can deny that there were two separate slates of electors sent to the January 6th congressional hearing by 7 different states. And Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution clearly provides that those slates of electors are in the sole plenary power and jurisdiction of the state legislatures. That was not up to Congress. That was up to those legislatures that sent those separate slate of electors. Now, let's look at, again, what the constitutional journey is. It starts on the 3rd of November with the vote, but it doesn't stop there. It goes to December 8th, which is Safe Harbor Day. It goes to December 14th, which is when we certify those electors. And again, there are 2 slates. Now, whether or not those both slates of electors were valid, that actually constitutionally fell in the lap of our vice president. And as a plan B, if you will, it fell to the legislators, to Senator Cruz, to Senator Hawley, and to the and to the congressional representatives that fought for that. For any member of Congress or any other lawmaker to say that those members were acting outside of the bounds of the Constitution is wrong. And for them to suggest that they did anything that was outside of their bounds and to suggest they should step down is an egregious violation of everything we stand for as Americans. That's what we stand by. And the president should not be vilified for this. In fact, he was really an uninterested party at that point. It rested solely on the vice president and the U.S. House of Representatives, as well as the Senate.
If I was still active with U.S. military intelligence and in law enforcement, as part of my investigation, I would want answers to some of the questions that need to be answered, because once answered, it kind of gives you an idea of what really happened and how it happened. For example, I'd like to know why a couple of hours before this incident, Capitol police officers were told to go home early. I've talked to some police officers, and I've heard also through other sources that this is what took place. I'd like to know why the National Guard was turned down by the Congress. I'd like to know why there wasn't enough intelligence and information that was gathered to let the alarm bells sound to bring in mutual aid, Washington, D.C. police, your federal law enforcement officers, etc. But maybe the alarm bells were sounded, and there were some people who truly neglected their duty. And I'm not talking about the street cops, folks. I'm talking about our so-called leaders. These are questions that need to be answered. This was a complete and total catastrophe on the part of the United States Congress, period. I mean, you can't tell me that Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, anybody, Republican or Democrat in that Congress had no idea that people were going to come to protest. So who are they coming after, folks? Just put the president aside. You know who they're coming after? PTA moms, soccer moms, dads, housewives, janitors, custodians, teachers, police officers, firefighters. They're coming after Main Street people, grassroots Americans from as far away as California. They're coming after us. They're coming after us, folks. Now, I don't say that to alarm people to a point that they're going to go out and do crazy things. We, in fact, encourage people to help us get the word out, not to go and do things illegally, not to threaten people, not to bully people. We don't do those things. You know why? We don't have to do those things, because we have the power and we have the truth on our side. And we'll get to that a little later. But these are questions that need to be answered. Now, what's more astonishing to me is that here I am talking to you about, I think, pretty legitimate questions that need to be answered. Where are our Republican leaders, if there's any left? I mean, to hear that and to see Mitch McConnell on TV completely turn his back on the president and says he's going to vote for impeachment. Liz Cheney, vote for impeachment. My folks, this is why I say, look, if you're ever on a ship that's going down with any of these people on it, rest assured you're going to die, because they will rip the life preserver off of your body and put it on themselves. These are truly individuals that are just so far, far away from reality. It boils down to this. I mean, look at, where are the high crimes and misdemeanors to impeach someone? Where are they, folks? Because if that's the case, another question that needs to be answered: why are not the Republicans in the United States Congress filing charges against Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, and every Democrat who have done what? Who have, in my view, incited to commit acts of violence across this country: Seattle, Los Angeles, Baltimore, I can name it all. Oh, but Lieutenant, they never said anything about violence. Well, when Maxine Waters or Nancy Pelosi or whoever they are tells their followers to get in their faces, to confront them aggressively, and who are they? Who are them? Us, Trump supporters. When they say those things, well, to me, you're doing the same thing you're accusing the president of. You are inciting violence. Furthermore, silence is consent. So you want to play the game? Let's play the game. Let's play the game is, I will give you what you don't want to hear, but what you should hear. And that's exactly what they're doing, folks. So can we not say, Tricia, that when Black Lives Matter and these other groups were burning buildings and chasing cops down the street and taking over police departments and taking over the entire city of Seattle, when not one word out of the mouths of these Democrats, is that not, hey, tacit approval? Or what is it then? It is inciting violence, or at least putting a little bit of a stamp of approval on what these people were doing.
Exactly. That language and rhetoric that has come from the left for several years culminated in the violence that we saw over the summer in all of those cities that you mentioned. And let's not forget that we had 30 lives lost in those riots, and the burned buildings and the destruction to property led to the president needing to sign legislation to make that a federal felony. And let's flip it over a little bit. As you said, silence is complicity. And let's look at the fact that the president has denounced the violence that occurred on January 6th in no uncertain terms. Where is the denunciation from Joe Biden? Where is the denunciation from Kamala Harris? And in fact, Kamala Harris was in an interview with Stephen Colbert talking about how she is in favor of everything ramping up even after the elections in terms of the violence that we saw. There has to be a unilateral standard. We can't say that the president is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors that didn't occur and not hold those other congressional members accountable. This is something that in terms of impeachment, it has to be a deliberative process. This is a knee-jerk reaction that is setting a very, very dangerous precedence for America.
Now, another thing that disturbs me is this, is that, so now you have these Democrats and the socialists and the communists stating, as they rightfully should, that they're very saddened to see the lives of police officers and others lost at this horrible event. But what troubles me is that for years, they have been advocating the defunding of our police. For years, they have been looking to take the power of our police away, the equipment away. And didn't Obama do that and Biden do that before President Trump came into office, when they took tactical, life-saving tactical equipment away from our police departments around the country? These people are hypocrites. Now, Tricia, what disturbs me is that they have gone down this road trying to pull the wool over the eyes of law enforcement officers around the country. We're not dumb, folks. We don't have blindfolds on us. These very people may have very well, through their actions, put these police officers in a position that they could simply not serve the best interests of the country because they didn't have the equipment they needed or the manpower they needed. You see, folks, these Democrats, these socialists, these communists, they don't remember or don't want to remember what they've been advocating for years about our police. They're anti-police. They are. So don't feed me right now that you're all of a sudden putting your arms around law enforcement throughout America. If that's the truth, if you support police, get rid of your darn defunding police policies, get rid of your criminal justice reform policies that have allowed bad actors to get out of jail without any type of probation or parole. And even before the cops get the bad guy to police departments, you have this bail reform that has turned inside out and upside down the criminal statistics in our cities. So prove it to us. Just prove it to us. They can't. Tricia, they can't, because they're not sincere. When we see them bowing their heads and putting their arms of sympathy around law enforcement, they have revealed themselves. And they've revealed themselves to a point that we now know what we have to do. And what we have to do is work within the framework of the law, in the framework of the Constitution, and vote these people out of office.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, you know, when we look at the burden that has been thrust upon the Capitol Police, we're just beginning to understand not just the intelligence that was on the ground at that moment when the breach occurred, but we also have to sift through a lot of the timeline details that, again, we're going to talk about, and also the evidentiary support for bringing in the Secret Service. I mean, we don't have all of the details of exactly what happened and what the, you know, the legal term mens rea, what the mindset is of that group that infiltrated and breached the Capitol. I mean, let's look at some of the facts. We know that the Secret Service was brought in, and we know that they were armed, because we know that the unfortunate death of the 14-year veteran that was killed there when she came in through the window, an act that we would never advocate. But we have no evidence to suggest that any of those that stormed the Capitol were armed. And yet the Secret Service was brought in an armed capacity. And I know that you probably, Steve, can talk much more about that in your many decades of law enforcement service and military service, but it leaves more questions than answers. Why was an armed offensive mounted against a look? No one wants to see anyone storm the Congress, but to my knowledge, as far as the intel on the ground goes, none of those were armed, but yet there was an armed offensive as a response. So before we go down this road of impeachment and trying to blame the president for something like this, let's make sure we have all the facts. They're trickling in. The Department of Justice is now involved. The FBI gave a statement today, and I think we know far less than what we need to make any sort of sound judgments or conclusions at this point.
This was a catastrophic event as a result of multiple failures on multiple levels. Police knew, we know they knew, because the chief of the Capitol Police asked for National Guard help a couple days before. The mayor of Washington, D.C. knew that there were going to be some problems and bad actors showing up. Everybody knew. You know how everybody knew? You knew and I knew. You know how we all knew? Because as you follow the pattern of protest around the country, whether it's on the left or on the right, guess who's showing up? Antifa? Yeah, maybe, right? How about other violent criminal actors? That's right. Who placed the bombs? Who placed the bombs at the RNC, the DNC, or wherever they were? Who placed those bombs there? You think mom and dad from Los Angeles, who on their own expense flied to Washington, placed those bombs there? Do you think some of the GOP leaders of clubs around the country placed those bombs there? Of course not. Bad people placed those bombs there with the intent to cause the havoc that they have caused. So again, I go back to my question. If we knew this, if they had to know this, if we knew what was going to occur, or at least the possibility that was going to occur based on the history that we see with regard to these protests, they had to know this. It's called connecting the dots, and simply it's called common sense. So what would be the probability and the possibility of bad people not showing up? What would be that? You know what? I got to tell you, it would be highly, highly probable and possible that they would show up. So just on those probability statistics, based on what we've seen, you're going to put barriers up. You're going to have 1,000 cops out there. You'll have them backed up by whatever you want with National Guard. If they did that, if they used their heads, if they were truly concerned about our country and our Constitution and the safety of the public, as well as their colleagues inside the halls of Congress, you know what they would have done? they would have had all that manpower out there. They would have taken the necessary measures. You know what that's called, folks? Every cop knows this. It's called proactive policing. Proactive means you're putting measures in place to prevent catastrophic disasters like we saw occur. Because once it occurs, you become reactive. And I've said this, Tricia, on every network I've been on. Every network. Could you imagine if two suicide bombers from a foreign country and a terrorist organization would have walked into the halls of Congress that day? They would have taken out our entire government. That's how, folks, angry I get. To suggest that one man, the president, caused all of this, to suggest that the PTO moms and dads and grassroots Americans went down there with the intent to cause insurrection and to take over our government. No, they went down there with the intent to save our government from them. That's what they did. Now, you could debate whether they're right or wrong. You could debate whether they're so-called misguided or not, if I'm misguided or not. But you cannot debate their intent. Their intent was to exercise their constitutional right of assembly and free speech. They had every right to do that. That was the one group, the law-abiding group that nobody wants to talk about. The other group's intent was to cause the chaos, the catastrophe, the death and destruction that they caused. Every single one of them should go to prison for a long time. But the fact of the matter is, we are at where we are today, not because of a failure on the part of the president, on the part of the protesters, a failure on the part of those people in power that had the ability and capabilities to be proactive. They failed us. They failed all of us. But now we're at a stage, Tricia, where it's going to be, let's pass the buck. Let's find scapegoats. Well, you know what? You may find, or at least attempt to find a scapegoat, one man, in this case, the president, but there are 75 million Americans plus that support him. But also, remember this, they also support the Constitution of the United States of America. We have urged them, and we will continue to urge them to lower the temperature. Help us lower the temperature. Let's get rid of these extremists. Every person who's an extremist advocating armed violence or any type of violence, they're not part of, they're not part of the team of people I work with, I can tell you that. They're not even part of the American fabric that built this country. They are in their own world. In fact, they're out of this world. They should be out of this world. They don't belong in any type of civil society when they're going to try to usurp the authority of law enforcement. Tricia, there's all kinds of news reports going around that there's going to be armed protests in capitals around the country. And so to what end? You're going to put the lives of young, innocent law enforcement officers in danger, of people who may come to peaceful protest in danger? We don't do things like that here in America. So we need to urge people. We need your help. We need to take a deep breath and then figure out how we're going to address this. We have a solution, at least a first step towards a solution. We're going to share that with you in a minute. But Tricia, what do you think? Lower it, be passionate. Look, I'm passionate. Nothing wrong with that. Get angry. Blow your steam off on the broadcast or at a neighbor. But don't blow the lid so far and so wide that we blew the mission, that we blew the agenda right up in the face of all the hard work we've done over the years. We don't want to do that, and we're not going to do it. We're Americans. We abide by the law. We fight for the Constitution. We support and love our law enforcement officers. That is where we should be focused. Tricia?
Oh, 100% right. And I love that. The mind has to be on the mission. And when the mission is right, I'll give you an example just from New Jersey, a protest that I spoke at last year when we addressed the bill, the mandatory vaccination bill in Trenton. And there were thousands of great like-minded citizens who were adhering to our Constitution and fighting for those principles. And that was when the state Senate was voting on the bill, and they could hear us from the voting floor, and we were chanting the mission, to your point, but we were not acting violently. That's a protest that is effective and that works within the confines of the First Amendment, the right to assemble, the right to protest. That's when it's right. But what we cannot do is we cannot take that next step. You're right, Steve. There were two different groups at that protest in Washington, D.C. And if we have a moment now, what I'll do is I will.
All right, folks, we just lost Tricia for a minute. We're having transmission problems, but as she's trying to get back online with us, I want to share a few things with you. So as I'm tweeting out and as I'm posting on other social media platforms, my position and how I feel and the fact that we need to come together, but we also, as conservatives and Republicans, need not to abandon ship, meaning you don't walk away from the president, you don't quit on him, you don't quit on our conservative values, you don't quit on our movement. What you do is you stand strong, you stand tough, and you do what is absolutely right, all right, in conforming with the Constitution of the United States and the law. So here's the response I got. And I'm going to bring this to your attention because it's important that you know that what you may be facing, I'm facing, and others are facing. So the response I get is, you're an or you're a lapdog for the president. You hate our country. You call yourself a professional law enforcement officer and a military man. You should be ashamed of yourself. You should take down anything you have on your social media platforms that is even in relation to President Donald J. Trump. The hate. And I got to tell you, the hate was incredible. Now, what disturbed me more than anything else, it takes a lot to disturb me, was when the attacks came on my religion, when the attacks came on my belief in God. That really disturbed me, but it was very revealing to me. It was truly revealing because it proved to me it's not just about taking out President Trump. It's taking our rights away from us, our rights to worship, our rights to assemble, our rights to bear arms. I mean, why bring my religion into it? Look at, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ as my savior, period. Which leads me to this. It also revealed to me that these individuals that are sending these messages out to conservatives are trying to intimidate and bully us into doing what? Into saying, oh boy, I better not post my feelings. I better not exercise my right to free speech because they're just going to continue to attack. And they're going to continue to attack and attack. I'll just lay low. I'll just hide my head in the sand. Well, I'm not going to be intimidated. In fact, they've emboldened me to do more within the framework of the law, to do more to advance our agenda, to do more to make sure that they don't take control of our country. Now, they've been successful to do certain things. Would you ever believe in America that we would see social media platforms remove from their platforms people like me and Tricia and others? I mean, we're preparing. Campaign for America, we are preparing to get removed. After last night, when you got 35,000 people viewing, well, somebody over there in Facebook world is going to take note of that. Tricia Flanagan can bear witness to this. She saw it. I've lost thousands and thousands of followers on Twitter. Tricia, how many have you lost?
Yeah, I've lost over 20,000 followers so far.
So 20,000 for her. We've got about 3 or 4, maybe 5,000 right now for me. I understand other conservatives on social media platforms have lost thousands. They're shutting us down. That's what they're doing. They're shutting us down. But we don't have to be shut down. This is why we're going to urge you to email us. We want your email. Why? Because as we continue to build towards new social media platforms, we'll stay in touch with you. In addition to that, see what we're doing now, folks? Look, we could set up Zoom meetings. We can actually set up Zoom broadcasts. There's a lot we can do. My point is this, to hide our heads in the sand, to surrender, to give up. You know what? We've then fallen into that trap. We've surrendered our country to them. I am not going to do that. I am not going to surrender my nation, my country. I am not going to surrender what this flag represents to anybody, especially a socialist and a communist, for goodness sakes. Our whole lives in America, at least my entire lifetime, we have fought the communists. We have fought the socialists and we've won and we've won and we won. And you know what? We are going to win again. These people are so dumb. I'll tell you what, they are so blind. Don't they realize that when the socialists and communists begin to truly take over, that they're not going to bother with us anymore, because in their mind, we're going to be pretty much powerless. They're going to go after the very Democrats who emboldened them and empowered them. This is not just about removing a president. This is about removing you, removing me, and Tricia removing the one document they fear other than what's in the Holy Bible, and that is the Constitution of the United States of America.
100%. And that's why it's so important, more important than ever, for us to stay connected as patriots, as lovers of our Constitution and our country. And my apologies for getting disconnected. What I was going to segue into is that, knowledge is power, right? And so when we hear the media chatting in unison and telling us that, there was one group and those were Trump supporters and they committed this egregious, heinous act. What we know is, what I was going to share with you is the timeline of events. You're probably getting bombarded with a lot of information from different news media outlets. Everything from USA Today to CNN to OAN are giving their own timeline of events. But I want to call out a couple of specific times on that timeline that I think are the true evidentiary support for the fact that there were two distinct groups that were at that march, and they did not have anything to do with each other. And so what I want to point you to on the timeline is that, many news outlets are talking about how the president's speech began at 11 a.m. on January 6th. While the rally itself began at 11 a.m., our president didn't begin speaking until noon. He started speaking at noon on the dot, and he spoke for an hour and 16 minutes. That brings us to about, ballpark 1:15 to 1:20. Now, we can't forget that the ellipse at the White House, where the President Trump supporters were, is a 45-minute walk to where Congress was convening. That's important because all of the roads were shut down. There was no vehicle traffic. The supporters of President Trump had to walk from the White House to where the Congress was. And that started between 1:15 and 1:30. Well, the first breach of the Capitol security occurred at 1:40. That was far before the time that any of President Trump's supporters could have even reached the Capitol. By the time they reached the Capitol, there were scores of people that were ahead of them. And the most important thing is that between 1 and 2 p.m., where the Capitol building was breached, as well as when the congressional members were sequestered and when they began exiting the building. And that's important because that shows us right there that when those two photos that you saw of the people that stood on the floor of Congress, they were not part of that original group that was listening to President Trump speak. And by the time President Trump had issued that order and that directive to be peaceful and to go home, those President Trump supporters were not anywhere near or in the Capitol. That's evidence that, in my opinion, is journalistic malpractice for the mainstream media to not convey. Now, where does that land us? That's just pieces of evidence. You connect the dots as viewers, but that's important to know. And it's important as Congress considers this very, very important measure that they're taking tomorrow when Nancy Pelosi is moving forward with articles of impeachment, not having all the facts and not even bothering to convey them.
Now, folks, as Tricia was explaining that to you, I'm looking at our Twitter broadcast. Well, it just went from a pretty significant amount of people down to 2. What do you think of that? It went down to 2. And last night at this time, we had 402 people on Twitter plus watching. We do have thousands. We do have thousands still on Facebook, but this just goes to the point that we have made that this is truly an attack on free speech. Now, what can we do as we approach the hour or the time that we leave and come back tomorrow night? What can we do? Well, we are always going to increase your awareness of what's going around us. Tricia Flanagan just went through something very significant. And we encourage you always to look up the things she shared with you, to do some research yourself. And then, if you have any questions, ask us. You could email us, we'll respond to you. But always, always remember this. Before you jump to conclusions, before you grasp onto something somebody said or something you saw, make sure you back it up through credible sources. I can assure you that Tricia has done a lot of research on this, and there was indeed a lot of credible sources that she actually sought before she went on the air with this. So what can you do? Well, let's put it this way. I look at my opinion, and I've concluded that a lot of these establishment politicians on both sides, Republican and Democrat, they truly don't fear the rallies. If they did, they would have changed their minds a long time ago. They don't fear the rallies. They don't fear much of anything because they're convinced that, well, you know what? They're in control and we're not. So what are we going to do? What is the two words? And I said this on the networks all over the country today. What are the two words that every politician from local offices to the national office, from both parties, the two words they fear, they tremble at? Believe me, in politics my whole adult life, their knees begin to shake when you utter two words. And those two words are term limits. They shudder. They think, my goodness, I won't be here past 8 years or 6 years or whatever. So what does this do, folks? It gets rid of lobbyists. It gets rid of special interest groups. It gets rid of bad money. It gets rid of all sorts of things that go on behind the scenes to fill the coffers of politicians. Why is it that people want to make a career out of politics? Look, I term limited myself. I thought 8 years was enough. And I'll tell you, it is enough. You got to wake up and realize that perhaps George Washington and the founders were right, that this is indeed a temporary job. We're supposed to be guardians of the people, not guardians of the office we hold. We're supposed to be guardians of the people. And if you're truly a guardian of the people, you are a guardian of the Constitution of the United States. So you know what? You're not to be there forever, as many of them are. This is what happens when you got people 80, 90 years old in Congress. They get to a point where, well, what do I have to lose? Screw the people. I'm going to continue to proceed with my agenda. Could you imagine being in office 25, 30 years, the obligations that special interests have to you and the obligations you have to them? I'll tell you what, folks, I've seen it myself. We, the people, we're not in control of this country. We're not. This should prove it. What they're doing in Congress doesn't mean we can't be in control of the country anymore. So as somebody said today on the air, another Republican, I have to agree with them. We better get tough. We better stand up. We better get tough. We better not surrender. We better not turn our backs on any of our leaders who are standing tough and strong, using their heads, working within the framework of the law and the Constitution. We better not do that. Because if we do that, we will condemn our nation to a point and to a place it's never been before. If we do that, the words of Nikita Khrushchev will ring out so clearly in those of us who heard those words or at very least read about those words. Don't worry, comrades, we won't have to fire one shot. They, the Americans, will commit political suicide. And that is the road we are going down. The Democrats, the socialists, and the communists cannot defeat us, folks. Believe me, they cannot defeat us. The only way this country goes down is if we follow the paths of a Mitch McConnell, if we follow the paths of those who are surrendering our constitutional rights, surrendering everything we ever lived and worked for in this country, surrendering our freedom to bullies, to those who intimidate. So let's stand strong. This broadcast is a grassroots broadcast. Not too many of us around. We're still here. Come hell or high water, they throw us off of these platforms, we will still be standing. Believe me. So let's keep that in mind. We need your help. And you know how we need your help? No, I'm not going to ask you to dig in your pocketbook. Those days are over. I'm going to ask you to dig into your heart, your soul, and your spirit. I want you to look at this flag. Many of you have this flag in your house, or at least flying in front of it. I want you to look at a book called the Holy Bible. I truly mean this, folks. Look at the words written in that Bible, in the Psalms, in the Proverbs. You're going to find also another document where you can find great comfort from. It is called the Constitution of the United States of America. It is called the Declaration of Independence. Just forget all the garbage that we're getting over the internet and on the news media. Look at the time-tested. I just shared with you the time-tested messages from our Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, the Holy Bible, and this great symbol of freedom. Just absorb that stuff. And I'll tell you what, with the help of God Almighty, you'll be lifted up. Your faith will become strong. And you'll truly say, you know what? I'm proud to be an American, and I'm not going to let anybody take that away from me. So how do you get started? How do you get involved in doing something and helping us invoke term limits around the country? See this, folks? This is something else that they don't like, all right, establishment politicians. It's called Operation Red Storm Rising. And you know what this has to do with? Organizing. Ronald Reagan said it all. Well, you know what? You're going to begin at the dinner table, right, Tricia? Begin at the dinner table. Talk to the wife, the husband, the kids, whoever. Talk at the dinner table on how we are going to keep America strong and keep this country great, and how we're going to maintain our liberties and freedoms. Here it is, the guide. We're revising it, folks. We're actually revising this, and you can get a brand new copy, PDF file. We'll send it to you as soon as it's complete, no cost. Keep your money, feed your family. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in saving the country, and I know Tricia is too. And Tricia, that Operation Red Storm Rising is a tremendous guide, isn't it, for the grassroots Americans sitting at that dinner table to use to start bringing people together for the good of this country.
Well, exactly. And that pulls on, two of my favorite things, and that's family around the dinner table and our mission to save America. And that's what it's really all about. That's how our country was founded. Patriots taking up the cause. And I think that PDF that you can get free of charge, we do this from our hearts and our souls for this country. And that is, the left has a playbook, right out of Saul Alinsky's manuscript. And we have a playbook also, and that's Operation Red Storm Rising. It's about how you can make a difference, how you can stand with us and really take our country back for the good of God and our Constitution. And I'll close that with the great words of some more great words of Ronald Reagan. And that is when evil is powerless when the good are unafraid.
Man, that is excellent. So now we've got the Democrats, the socialists, and the communists, and career politicians of both parties. I'm going to show you another symbol they fear. You see this, folks? They actually fear this symbol here. Okay, let me get that down there. See that symbol? That symbol is Campaign for America. That is an eagle that's sharp, an eagle that's got courage, an eagle that doesn't surrender, that's willing to fly into troubled waters in order to do what? To save America. All right, so here's the email. Mail, M-A-I-L, at Rogers, ROGERS 4, F-O-R, America.us. That's mail at Rogers for America.us. Now, we will post that email on Facebook. You can't post it on Twitter if we're still there at this hour. And we'll post it on, you can't even post it on Zoom, or YouTube. But we will post it on Facebook. If you don't get it through a posting, you know what? This is a video. You're going to be able to push that video back and get our email. Mail at Rogers for FOR America.us, free PDF file. And we will also add to that. Again, this isn't a sales pitch. There's no cost to any of this. You want to have a meeting in your dining room? I would like to be invited, right, to Natasha? Don't you think we'd like to be invited to those dining rooms around America, Tricia? We'll come into your dining room via Zoom. All right, we'll do it. We'll show you how we can set this thing up, and right from our studios, we'll come and join you. We will come and join you, and we'll have some coffee, and we'll have some tea, and some good old American apple pie. All right, folks, and we'll have a conversation. All right, I think that would be good. Tricia, the more I think about that, I think people want to talk. They need an outlet. They need to have a discussion. They need to have questions answered. We have the ability to do that now, don't we?
We do. And this is the new town square, right? I mean, in the era of COVID, we have this tool, this Zoom tool where we can come right into your home, and we'd be honored to do that. Like you said, hey, I'm always up for a good slice of apple pie and some great conversation. And this is what we need. We'll come in for prayer too. That's the part of our history that we want to resurrect, and what will be a powerful initiative moving forward. So email us, let us know. We're glad to share that time with you.
You know, Tricia, when you use words like "we are now the news," "we're the new town square," I got to tell you, it reminds me of this period of time in American history right here. Isn't that great? What do you think of that, folks? Hey, Natasha, what do you think of that? Huh? Well, you know, it's great we could still laugh and through all the troubled times, at the end of the day, we're Americans and we win. That's it, folks. 6:30 p.m. tomorrow night. We will be here on Facebook Live, Zoom, YouTube Live, Twitter Live. And if we're not here, folks, we'll find a way to get to you. And also, we have something else unique happening. Thursday night, we have scheduled a very good conservative, strong man of integrity in the New Jersey GOP who wants to come on the broadcast, who I invited. And he actually is going to come on, Tricia. I think that's great when we have someone who's in the inner workings of the New Jersey GOP and other GOPs around the country who want to come on and add value, constructive value, to helping heal the wounds that this nation is suffering. And as we move forward, to believe in our great God Almighty for all the blessings moving forward. I think that's great. I think that's great. All right, folks, that's it. 6:30 p.m. tomorrow night here on Campaign for America. Mail at Rogers, FOR4America.us. We'll get you all this stuff. And remember, folks, keep our country in prayer, our president in prayer. Just keep your neighbors, your family in prayer. And believe me, I don't say this lightly. We're Americans. We win. We win. God bless you. God bless America. And remember, the chief end of man is to love and to glorify God forever. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers on behalf of Tricia Flanagan. God bless you.